Critical Role's new RPG, Daggerheart, is selling out faster than YouTubers when Hasbro offers us money. Nah, Hasbro only deals in sacrificial blood. And this new dagger to the heart is piercing through online RPG discussion both as hype for its fresh ideas and as some hate for its ideas that cling too closely to D&D or its other, more narrative RPG sources. And because the internet hates popular things. So forgive my comparisons. I know many folks prefer RPG reviews to focus purely on the subject's own merits and misgivings, but A, we're mainly talking about the foundational mechanics of Daggerheart, which came from other games. No initiative is actually awesome. The forced improv is challenging, and everyone's wrong. This narrative game for theater kids is definitely a crunchy and strategic accounting game for chess club nerds. And B, no game is an island, and this game especially was not created in a vacuum. The designers were quick to reveal their many inspirations in the book, from Dungeons & Dragons, to Blades in the Dark and Apocalypse World, to a bunch of wonderful role-playing games that comparatively, no one has ever played. Oh, except Jeff in the comments. Get him, Jeff. And let's be real, Daggerheart came about when it did because Dungeons & Dragons forced the hand of so many RPG publishers with its 2023 licensing controversy, which we will not rehash in this video. Did that a few times recently without even realizing it. But for the good memories, we are starting this review with Daggerheart's origin story that resulted in such fun core mechanics, which you may want to run differently to make it more fun for your group. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and this video is not sponsored by Critical Role or Darrington Press, but they did send me the book, the cards, and the Daggerheart scented candle. I had completely forgotten about this until Professor DM called me out in his review, like, and Bob's gonna run this game for, wait, what does he sound like? Bob World Builder is going to run Daggerheart for me soon, and since he got the candle, I'll get to smell Daggerheart too. Not a professional voice actor. But as it turns out, the Daggerheart candle smells like Matt Mercer's shampoo? Daggerheart review, 10 out of 10. We're done here. JK, but if you do want to check out the Daggerheart one-shot that I wrote for Professor DM and his group, Death at Hellfast Spire, with some cool original art by me, link below. January 2023. Daggerheart's story begins when the Marisha Ray, Matt Mercer power couple is interviewed by the same journalist who broke D&D's licensed story, and they drop this sneaky little teaser.
Do you guys see yourselves making your own system?
Man, that would be rad. I mean, if ever the opportunity were to, arise with the right people and the right design, and it made sense for the type of show we were doing, then I would love that.
It's something that excites us.
Oh, we'd love to make our own game, but who knows when that'll happen.
A little while later.
So we can tease a little bit, right, Matt?
I know we're not supposed to, but I really want to, so what the hell? The game is called Daggerheart. It's a fun and fresh update to the fantasy genre of RPGs, and it's been designed for long-term campaign play and character progression. We've been working on it for a while, and we're super excited for you to check it out.
Suddenly, we got a title, we got some core tenets of the game, and we got confirmation that they were working on it for a while, but finally had a good reason from D&D to speed things up.
Many months later.
And a speedy 11 months later, they announced the Daggerheart open beta. In the meantime, they had playtested at some conventions. That's how I got in an early session with the lead designer, and that's how we got the first Reddit freak out when everyone learned that this game does not include a rigid initiative order. If players can go whenever they want, how can I stop the talkative guy in my group from just going over and over and over? To tell him to stop? And talk to my players? This news was surprising, but it was more intriguing than worrisome. One of the most popular RPG systems besides D&D, powered by the apocalypse works this way, and it definitely inspired other parts of Daggerheart that I don't like as much, but I'm very glad Darrington stuck to their guns on this despite the backlash. No joke, Daggerheart's fluid turn order is a big part of what saves this game's combat for me. Negatives on combat later, because instead of the D&D initiative method, instead of that, every player, including the GM, is poised and excited for an opening. The game encourages you to be actively listening to your fellow players and participating because there's a bunch of awesome mechanics for cooperation, which we'll also cover later with combat. And as long as you're playing with nice people, everyone gets plenty of time in the spotlight. That said, my group mainly experienced this initiative method when we played Nimble RPG, review coming soon, and I bring that up because while Nimble also has a lot of cooperative intervening, the default initiative in that game is to go around the table, which I still think might be best in Daggerheart for groups of about 6 players or more. So if you have experience running Daggerheart for big groups like that, please share your preferred method of initiative down in the comments. Obviously, the Critical Role cast does fine with 7 players, and not just because they are great at improv and passing the spotlight, but also thanks to the game's built-in limitations and prompts for turn order. Yeah, it's not completely loosey-goosey, narrative only, go with the flow, fiction first. The PCs can only keep going as long as they keep succeeding on rolls or gaining hope, and thus, the GM goes when the PCs fail or roll with fear, or when the GM just wants to intervene by spending fear. Hope? Fear? What? If you don't know about those mechanics yet, I'm going to give you both my positive and negative takes, pun intended, right after our extremely relevant and helpful sponsor, the No-Prep Gamemaster. Train your brain to run tabletop role-playing games. Is it cool to try to do this spot without having scripted? They sent me this book completely out of the blue, and I instantly read it cover to cover. I don't usually do that when people just send me stuff randomly. But it is just packed with practical tips for improvising games. One that really stuck in my head was run the movie. As in, don't be afraid to just steal the plot right from some piece of media you enjoy and run that as a framework for your session. That's exactly how I created my Daggerheart session for Professor. And sure, it's got a D20 on the cover, but this book really does apply to any game because it is all about getting in the mindset to improvise. And if you're running Daggerheart, this is going to be a big help. So check out the No-Prep Gamemaster through the link below. That Daggerheart playtest period was also when we first learned about the weird core roll, using 2d12 for players to have a higher max result and a little curve toward the middle as a treat, while the GM rolls 1d20 for a lower max and pure randomness. As you may recall, this core roll reveal was also kinda crazy at the time. I think I'm on record saying Critical Role's logo is a D20, so of course their game will use a D20. But we live and we learn, or do we? You see, this pair of D12s represents hope and fear, the foundational attributes forming the narrative-driven, fiction-first core tenets of Daggerheart gameplay. And so far, while playing and running this game, I have largely ignored this fundamental mechanic, and it's fine. So here's the thing, right? Roll 2d12, take the total, plus a modifier compared to a target difficulty number. Easy, familiar, but wait, there's more. If your hope die is higher, then you succeeded or failed with hope, meaning you're supposed to come up with a positive narrative twist to your success or failure, and the PC gains a point of hope. Vice versa, if fear is higher, the GM gains a fear token, and you gotta come up with a negative narrative twist to your failure or success, but explicitly never to undermine the success. So of course, my group uses the currency part, gaining points of hope for PCs and fear tokens for the GM, because you need those resources to use your cool character and monster features. But so far, we rarely throw on the narrative twists because, sorry to break the illusion, but I'm not a professional actor who can easily come up with those narrative twists at the drop of a hat. This is one part of Powered by the Apocalypse that I don't really like, because neither I nor my fellow players, nor Professor's group who I ran for, nor when I played with the lead designer of Daggerheart, did anyone seem to like the idea of pausing the game to come up with, how does this success with fear work out how you wanted, but also end up raising the stakes? To be clear, I mean that in my playtest session with the designer, we never had to pause because he and the other players, including comedic wits Pointy Hat and Ginny D, were really good at instantly improvising a narrative twist for better or for worse. However, as I've mostly been playing Daggerheart with mere mortals, unless someone at the table already has a fun twist on the tip of their tongue for that action, we just ignore this core narrative element of the game, and it's still totally fun for us this way. My only complaint about it is that it's a catch-22. If learning and struggling to use improv narrative twists slows the game down so you ignore it in the name of flow and fun, then you can't get better at it. You must learn this improv skill the hard way, and in an age of convenience, that's a little annoying. But I find it super admirable for Daggerheart to actually try teaching a fun skill that can bring more laughter to people's lives. Because having fun with my friends is the reason I play RPGs, so gosh darn it, even if I kind of suck at the narrative twist part, I'm gonna give it a shot. But the wildest part is that by playing Daggerheart without that rule emphasizing the narrative, fiction first, all that, I feel like I have seen The Matrix here. There's so much discussion and even other reviews of Daggerheart describing it as this flowy, fluid, narrative-first, theater kids game. It's a game for theater kids. If that's you, you have been theater-pilled by Critical Role's advertising copy.
With a narratively driven action. Narrative-driven play, something in the narrative that
sort of blends the narrative and the crunchy together.
Yeah.
This game is packed with crunch. 9 character backgrounds to choose from, each with a unique feature. 18 ancestries, each with 2 unique character features. 9 classes, aka sets of features, each with 2 subclasses that you choose from at level 1 for even more features. And there are 9 domains, these semi-class specific sets of abilities and spells from which you also choose a few features at level 1. And on top of all those features, you are tracking hit points, and armor, and stress, and hope, and for some abilities and spells, yet another unique set of tokens or a countdown die for how many times you can use that ability or spell. That is a lot to chew on. Only by comparison to other very crunchy and detailed games like 5e, 3e, or Pathfinder could Daggerheart be called simple. Because in a genuinely simple RPG, you don't even have stats. After I ran Daggerheart for Professor DM, he ran Dread for me, where the only mechanic, not the core mechanic, the only rule is to pull a block from a Jenga tower when you do something risky. However, I will happily emphasize that each of these crunchy games often flow like a simple game because of their own simple core mechanic. Roll high. And most of the crunch is focused around combat. So, before we get to my spicy verdict, which combat system does Bob prefer? First, we're gonna lightning round through some observations by my players. 1. Daggerheart character creation feels as complex and time-consuming as 5e, but being able to pass around the cards really speeds it up, and it definitely will once we become more familiar with all the options. 2. Character options are definitely too kitchen sink for hardcore Tolkien heads, but you gotta love a frog dude. One of my friends is playing a ribbit reflavored as a bearded dragon named Mr. Cha-Cha, and he freaking rules. Also, I was able to take the fawn goat-like option with a boost to jumping and a leg attack and reflavor that to recreate my first RPG character who at the high levels of play had the legs of a tiger. But now I get to have fun with that at level 1. 3. Level 1 characters are so heroic and crunchy that the higher levels of Daggerheart seem intimidating, but we haven't gotten there yet. 4. The level 1 abilities were tough to choose from because they were all cool. Heck yeah, man, I do not want to play an RPG where any of the options are the bad options. And 5, the level 1 character background and connection questions were so fun to fill out together, not only for how easily they help you create a mini backstory, but in our home game, it was hilarious because we only had 3 players in the first session, and there are only 3 of these connection questions. And it just so happened that none of us used our most dramatic or romantic connection question, so later, when our 4th player finally made his character, he was bombarded with, "Why do you grab my hand at night? Why do you act differently when we're alone than when others are around? Why do we keep our shared past a secret?" But the other background questions did immediately add to the fiction of our first session in our Western-style Colossus of the Drylands campaign run by Grace World Destroyer, because our bard had to come up with a nemesis or an evil ex or something. So this guy was called Crazy Jim, and Grace instantly turned him into a minor villain by using that name, Crazy Jim, for an NPC who was already in the adventure. And riffing off that, Grace also named the NPC's bad cowboy brother Jimmy the Guy. And naturally, when we met this deadly duo, I dubbed them the Brothers Jim. And sheesh dude, maybe I am a professional improv actor, cause that got a few sensible chuckles from my friends. Sidebar for a mini review of the Colossus of the Drylands campaign frame, Grace says it's the easiest one to run because it does a better job than the others at laying out a plot for you. And usually I prefer a module just giving me a cool environment to discover with my players, but I agree that some kind of plot is good for superheroic games like this, which focus way less on exploration and way more on combat versus the bad guy. That is how I structured my Hellfast Spire one-shot for Professor, literally following a 5-act structure just like the official Daggerheart Quick Start, and it went really well. And so, combat. Spicy verdict, then we'll summarize the why, and hey, I totally reserve the right to change this opinion once I experience more of the middle and high levels of Daggerheart, but right now, yes sirree, I like it more than D&D. Because even though my crunchy Daggerheart character sheet is just like 5e, overflowing with too many character features, like the main Daggerheart character sheet has 0 space to write most of your features from character creation, let alone the other domains you pick up. So if you don't have the cards, you gotta print out this extra sheet just to fit everything at level 1. And even though all these features still manifest through bookkeeping mechanics that tend to distract my otherwise imaginative brain from visualizing the scene at hand, they are usually tied to one specific resource each: HP, armor, stress, hope, or a unique token or countdown. So, as opposed to having 8 features all tied to my one bonus action, these specific resources categorize my features, providing a built-in organizational structure that actually helps me remember what I can do on my turn. Like, okay, I got a lot of hope right now, so I could use this. Or like, I could use armor to reduce that damage, but I've barely marked any stress yet, so I can use this ability and save my armor for when I really need it. And crucially, you are not just depleting these resources. They fluctuate, going down and back up over the course of a battle, which prevents you from experiencing the second worst feeling of D&D 5e combat. Dang, I've run out of stuff. I can't do anything on this turn. The worst feeling is slog, but we already talked about how Daggerheart Initiative takes care of that. And don't get me wrong, that same out-of-options D&D feeling is awesome in lower fantasy or pulpier games like Shadowdark or Dungeon Crawl Classics, where you don't primarily use your sheet to solve problems, you use your imagination and the scene at hand. And when it comes to these interwoven narrative/mechanical elements in Daggerheart combat, it is fun as heck to gain hope mid-battle and to watch the GM's fear slowly build up, knowing that pool will be used to drown you. And I know I critiqued my group's improv skills earlier, but other players at my table are better at describing what it looks like when they spend an armor to decrease incoming damage from 1 HP threshold to the next lowest HP threshold. Yeah, that subsystem seems complicated at first because there are definitely extra steps compared to D&D, but it also lets you roll big damage without needing to subtract those big numbers from HP. You just compare the damage to your thresholds, see where it lands, and mark 1, 2, or 3 hit points. But that's intense too, because you only have between 6 and 10 hit points max, and at 0, you choose a death move. And Daggerheart Death is probably worth its own video, because back to Mr. Mercer's initial claim for long-term fantasy campaigns, it seems like you will be burning through characters faster than you do in D&D 5e, which is not how Critical Role has historically run their show. Again, I gotta play the high levels to find out, but so far in only our second session when we had a tough battle and then later fought the first Colossus, I think 2 of us had to choose death moves in that session. Because it's so early in the campaign, we just went with the, I fall unconscious and, heal me later thing. But it would be, I don't know, kind of like boring if they choose that every time. Also, a more recent claim on the book itself says fast-paced and dynamic combat. So just like the crunch, I must ask, fast-paced compared to what? Because for my group's Professor's group, my playtest with the designer, and even when watching Critical Role themselves in the Age of Umbra campaign, it's maybe somewhat faster than 5e. However, compared to the overwhelming majority of TTRPGs, that's on the slow side. Combat is dynamic and engaging, but yeah, you still have to add all those damage dice, and for every PC action roll, you're not adding 1 random number, but 2 random numbers, which objectively takes a little bit longer, even if you ignore the narrative twist to every roll. My favorite part though, what could be more dynamic and heroic than sacrificing your own resources to aid an ally in battle? Spend hope to give an ally advantage, and you cannot use that on yourself. Lots of unique abilities and spells that use hope or stress or other resources to help other players out, and the coolest version of this by far, the tag team moves, where one player can spend 3 hope to perform a narrative and mechanical combo move with another PC, where you both roll 2d12, you choose which result to use, and you can both gain hope from it, and if it's an attack, you both roll big damage for a huge hit. You can do 1 of those tag team moves per player per session, but it's freaking awesome, and specifically in the Colossus of the Drylands campaign frame, you can do that more times when you're fighting a Colossus. And I love to see it working, because this is the kind of stuff I've had in my dusty old fantasy RPG draft notes that I will someday turn into a game. One more quick critique. Matt, I know you're out there, because you definitely listened to my recommendation about using an abacus a couple years ago. Definitely my video, like who else could have come up with that? So please, Matt Mercer, sell us an abacus. If it looks cool and it's tiny, so it doesn't take up much space on the table, I would buy one to make playing this game a little easier. Altogether, despite Daggerheart's crunchiness and my own inability to visualize things when I'm doing so much accounting, the organization of those resources and features, combined with the free-form turn order, combined with movement in ranges instead of squares, which I didn't even mention here because I've talked about it in a million other videos, combined with the epic and cooperative mechanics, combined with the optional improv narrative twists that I will work to get better at. Son of a gun, low-level Daggerheart is killing it. Does that mean Daggerheart will be my end-all be-all RPG forever? Heck no, definitely not. I was freaking born to hack games and cram them back together, but Daggerheart is a brilliant mosaic of ideas, and I'm currently convinced that because Daggerheart is actually giving people something fresh to crunch into and talk about, that it will make serious waves in at least the online RPG community, even though Stranger Things Season 5 is coming out, whatever. So if it's not currently sold out, you can use the affiliate links below to pick up Daggerheart and support this channel. But remember to check out our awesome sponsor and to thank the awesome Bob World Builder patrons and YouTube members who make all this possible. And they get bonus videos every month. Thank you, and keep building.